When we talk about this issue of blindly imitating others at the expense of losing our Islamic values, this is not going to give us izzat and respect. Yes, there is nothing wrong in adopting norms that are in line with Islamic values. There are many, many things that we can learn, even from the Western non-Muslim society. But as long as they are in line with Islamic values, there is no issue. And therefore, we have to be careful. There should be no blind following on this issue. In 1920s and 30s, there was an intellectual debate about the future of Egypt. This is where the First War started. Ottoman Empire and the Khilafat came to an end. And Egypt was, in a way, now looking for its own future and independence. And so there was a lot of debate among the thinkers of the time there. And this is basically one of the main themes of my thesis that I wrote on my master's program. And so there were extremes on both sides in Egypt. On the liberal side, you had a person by the name of Dr. Taha Hussein, a very prominent writer and thinker of that time. He has many good books also, but he was someone who was advocating total assimilation with the West if Egypt wants to progress. And the way he puts it, he says, and these are his words, "We must follow the path of the Europeans so as to be equals and partners in civilization, in its good and evil, in its sweetness and bitterness, in what can be loved or hated, and what can be praised or blamed." So it's a total blind following of the Western norms. And of course, it didn't work. Still Egypt is suffering. They have not attained the izzat that they were looking for. At the same time, you had Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder of the modern Turkey. He is the one who abolished the Khilafat system and actually founded the new system on the basis of secularization, where Islam was totally suppressed, to the extent that even the azan on the minarets were not in Arabic. They were all in Turkish. And the namaz, they said, if you want to do it in Turkish language. He forced his nation to adapt the script of Latin alphabets and not alif ba ta. So you can realize all of a sudden the Turkish people are being cut off. The next generation would not be able to read the history of the past. Not only that, even when it came to clothes, they were forced to adapt the European clothings. And when we complain about, ban on hijab during our time in Quebec and before that in France, in public places, you have to realize that it was in Turkey, decades before that, where hijab was forbidden. And even when it was allowed, it was not allowed in the schools and universities. And so that was the level of, total blind following. And Raza Shah, the father of the last Shah of the Pahlavi dynasty, also tried to imitate Atatürk in Iran, although he was not fully successful. But the idea was that he was following the example of Kemal Atatürk. And what was the purpose, especially for Turkey? The main issue is that we see geographically Turkey is divided into the European continent and the Asian continent. They felt this pride that we are part of Europe. All these changes were being made. Blind following of the Europeans was so that we can get recognition by the Europeans and they will consider us to be equals. It's almost now a century, close to that. And yet Turkey is not yet accepted as a member of the European Union. This is where we realize, by changing your appearance, you're not going to become anything. You have to maintain your identity, your self-respect as a community, as a nation.